Tommy Broughan.
Thanks, Ken Corla. In my speech I made a few weeks ago, I think on Budget 2017, I welcomed the very small and partial restorations of social welfare payments by €5 a week. I also welcomed the increase from 85% to 75% to 85% in the Christmas bonus, but of course would like to see the bonus fully restored, as I know it is a huge help to social welfare recipients at the probably most expensive and stressful time of the year. In my own pre-budget submission to independent pre-budget submission to Ministers Noonan and Donoghue, of course, I called for a more significant increase for pensioners of at least €7 a week, and for a further increase in child benefit for at least €5 a week per child, or €5 per month per child, and an increase in FIS thresholds by at least €5. Ken Corla, I'm a member of the Budgetary Oversight Committee of this Dáil, and I argued in my own pre-budget submission that the IFAC and ESRI estimates of a fiscal space of €1 billion could be significantly expanded, in addition to ensuring that due levels of corporation and income taxes would be paid to the Exchequer in 2017 through reforms of the Finance Act provisions and greater resources for our revenue. I propose a number of new revenue-raising measures, including the introduction of a wealth tax, an increase in stamp duties on shares until we adopt a financial transactions tax, and I welcome the fact that I think some of our EU partner governments, I think 10 of them, are about to proceed with the FTT, and a third rate of income tax I also propose for incomes over €100,000. In the event, of course, the fiscal space was expanded, but by only to €1.3 billion. I do recognise, however, that an important portion of this was allocated to the Department of Social Protection. But the core aim, of any social protection minister in this state, including the incumbent who is not here tonight, should be at least to restore the pre-crash value of social protection benefits and assistance, and this is a key target indeed of my own independent proposals to Ministers Noonan and Donoghue. And even with the €5 a week increase in sections 6, 7, 8, 18 and 22 of this bill, and further partial restoration of the Christmas bonus, the total social protection budget is still effectively capped at €20 billion down to 2020, and the Minister here tonight, you have obviously agreed to that capping of the social protection budget. This budget, of course, represents 35% of total state expenditure and includes spending of €19.85 billion this year on our pensioners, citizens with disability and our other most vulnerable citizens and families. And of course, social protection expenditure, it's only due to rise to €19.9 billion in 2018 and just over €20 billion in 2019. But the most vulnerable citizens in our society, Cathaoirleach, suffered most in the 8 or was it 9 austerity budgets since late 2008, and the very small partial restorations of some payments in 2016 and 2017 does little to restore the economic well-being of these citizens and families. In particular, I believe a higher value must be placed on carers, as without them the cost of providing care for our elderly and citizens with disability would increase hugely through those specific figures have not been provided to me from this government in PQs. I asked about the cost of the financing of care. Minister Varadkar did indicate in the PQ to myself that a €7 a week rise for all state pensioners would cost in the order of €215 million per annum, and a further €5 a week increase for all other categories of social insurance and social assistance was estimated last July to cost about €207 million in a full year. So a very minimal package that the Minister and the Minister here tonight would have needed would have been at least €422 million, and of course it wasn't achieved by this Minister, by Minister Varadkar or any of his colleagues. I also, of course, asked, as I said, for increase in child benefit rates and for increases in FIS. A crucial element of the social protection budget, of course, also is the social insurance fund, now standing, I think, at almost €10.85 billion, or €8.98 billion net of the total €19.6 billion social protection budget. And I'd welcome perhaps a response from the Minister in his speech to the current standing of the social insurance fund, to the extent to which it is in surplus or has moved back into surplus. The fund, of course, has recovered from the devastating deficit at the worst period of the crash after 2008, and I note that the net fund in the figures the Ministers gave us on Budget Day show a 4% increase for 2017, though I note that the social assistance estimate has declined by 1% over 2016. But these figures remind us again, Cathaoirleach, that a huge percentage of the social protection budget comes from workers' weekly contributions. Neoliberal economists and journalists always harp on about the 20 billion social protection budget, while conveniently ignoring the role of the social insurance fund to which workers themselves and their families have contributed. In reality, of course, the past two governments have relentlessly suppressed the social assistance budget under 12 billion and now have it down to 11 billion, with terrible consequences for the most vulnerable sectors of society. I welcome, of course, extension of services to all payers of social insurance, including those provided for in Section 3 in paternity benefits for Class S contributors, in Section 4 an invalidity benefit, and Section 9 for dental and optical benefits for both employed and self-employed recipients. Section 16 also on the inclusion of the bill on the transitional period for Romanian and Bulgarian nationals who have been paying social insurance, I think is also a generous provision. But I wish to take the opportunity in particular to condemn Minister Varadkar's, and it's unfortunate that he's not here tonight, but his recent dangerous rhetoric of trying to set off pit different areas of Irish society one against the other. First of all, by trying to set off the striking Gardaí, who are striking for their basic restoration of their pay against the general public, and then later on the social protection recipients against public servants like teachers. I think both interventions were singularly unhelpful and create a damaging narrative, and is part of the fear-mongering divide and conquer tactics that show the worst in politics, on what I think the Minister will agree is a generally sad day for politics in our world. So as I've illustrated above, the framing of the social protection budget and the construction of the other key budgets of public service provision for our schools, hospital, security services, civil services, etc., it's not a zero-sum game. Restoration of income for the nearly one-third of our people, or the 2.1 million that Deputy Connolly just referred to, who depend on social insurance and social assistance payments, is crucial. They're entitled to full restoration, Minister, while you hold your role in this government. But I believe resources are clearly there in our economy to fund a truly fair and humane social protection budget, while also ensuring that key public service professions are properly paid and resourced, including our National Civil Service. And as I said again, whatever the competition is for the leadership of Fine Gael and so on, I think these attempts to set off different categories of our society against each other are singularly, as I said, unhelpful. I welcome the partial restorations, which will benefit approximately 1.5 million people, but I note, of course, that they're not scheduled to come into effect until mid-March 2017. So, as I previously said, I believe this date should be brought forward to the beginning of the year and commence in January 2017. And I'd hope that Section 18 and 22 will be amended by all the parties in this House in this regard, and I hope that that's something that the Minister might bring back to his colleagues in the Fine Gael party. These payments, of course, assist the most vulnerable in our society, and despite our social protection system, Ireland continues to experience high levels of poverty. Just to take one example of which the Minister is well aware, the excellent brother Kevin Crowley of the Capuchin Day Centre in Smithfield, who has been doing invaluable and sterling work in our city centre for years, has reported recently that the demand for the service is now at its highest that it's ever been in 50 years. Weekly volunteers provide some 600 hot dinners to individuals, families and children, 1,700 food parcels per week, which are distributed on Wednesdays and have increased dramatically from before the recession, when they used to provide about 400 per week. Now, that's happening on your watch, Minister, when you're a member of this government. We can quite clearly see incredible levels of poverty in that regard. Can I just say very briefly, in the brief time that remains to me, I would like to echo the comments that were made by Deputy Gino Kenny and Deputy Breed Smith and Deputy Connolly in relation to the treatment of lone parents and to the draconian changes that were made by the previous Minister, by Minister Burton, and which I think are still having a very detrimental effect on lone parent families, 60% of whom experience one or more form of deprivation. I'd also like to echo Deputy Smith's comments in relation to the gross discrimination against women workers when it comes to retirement. I think we've all been it's been brought to our attention the anger that people feel after maybe 20, 25 years of rearing a family, 20, 25 years in work, work, and when then people come and find that their pensions are far lower than what they expected over all their years of work, and clearly the 1994 scheme needs to be looked at. And just very briefly, final point, I think that one of the key challenges to the structure and the minimum payment levels of this social insurance and social assistance, the system that we have, which is in the bill here before us, we should begin, I think, to look again at the whole concept of basic income. We did have, I think, a referendum in Switzerland earlier this year in which a significant portion of the Swiss population voted for a basic income, with countries like Finland and the Netherlands, which are exploring the whole concept, where every single citizen, every child, every woman, every man will have a basic income. And I know Father Sean Healy and Social Justice Ireland have rung strongly with that, and I'm aware some of our Green Party colleagues, it's always been one of their proposals as well. I think this Minister, and perhaps the Minister here tonight, you might again have a look at this proposal to begin seriously looking at it for our own country, to get away from this whole idea of providing income for a sort of deserving poor, and to get forward to a country where we have a fair, egalitarian distribution of income for all of our citizens. Thanks, Cahirlock.